All right, so now we are on the wonderful oxymoron of budget fucking control. I am not happy with this list. I'm not proud of this list. I don't like this list, but it has to happen. So, control is the most expensive archetype in the game. I truly do not believe budget control works because you need to have a certain amount of top end, you need to have a certain amount of expensive removal. So, for this, I am allowing legendaries you can get with gold, the expansion cards like Dark Brotherhood or Clockwork City or what have you. What are they? Forgotten Hero collections, just to try to make this list even remotely playable. The thing with control is you don't really care about mana efficiency, you care about value efficiency. You want each one of your cards to be worth 1 or 2 at minimum of your opponent's cards. You want to try to, if you're playing something for 3 mana, you want it to answer something that costs 3 or more mana from your opponent. If the opponent plays a 2-drop and you answer it with a 1-drop, but it's a 1-for-1 and you float 2 mana on turn 3, that's still a good thing. Like, you still win. If they play Goblin Skulk on turn 2 and then it's your turn 3 and you firebolt it, you're still up. So mana efficiency isn't as important in this. So you'll notice, and Duke, before he left, did comment that there are a lot of one-ofs in this list. And that's true. You need a plethora of answers in a control deck. You're not looking for redundancy, you're looking to be able to answer everything. And there are a lot of different situations that arise in a game. So you'll notice 1 Execute, 1 Grizzly Gourmet, and 1 Aerostorm. You might say they all do the same thing. That's not really true. They all do slightly different things. Grizzly Gourmet is a 3-drop that answers something with 2 or less attack, and it puts a small body on the board. Execute is a 1-mana spell, doesn't put anything on the board, but does answer something with 2 health or less. And then Aerostorm is a 3-drop spell that answers a lane of 2 health or less minions. So it's all very slight changes, but I do think, especially in a budget list, you're going to need enough answers to answer everything. You'll run 3 Piercing Javelins and 3 Cast into Times. That is for redundancy for hard removal. Yellow has some of the only and easily the best hard removal in the game. Purple is second, I think, with Mummifies and whatnot, but that is by far better. So Arrest is just saying I don't have any of the other really good cards. I'm not playing Tribunal, so I don't have Edict of Azura, so I'll play Arrest just to not only immediately answer my opponent's big threats, I don't let them get the last gasp effects, and I don't let them pull it from their graveyard again, or shuffle it with Uprising, or Knights Remember, any of that. Reverberating Strike and Firebolt, again, slightly different. Lightning Bolt, again, slightly different, but they all do enough of a similar thing to answer very specific situations. Another important thing with control is you don't want to die.
Don't die.
You really, like, that's kind of your win condition. Not dying is your win condition. So putting in a lot of guards or ways to heal are going to be the way you win this. Hence having Hive Defenders and Monmouth Castellians and Phalanx Exemplars. That's just how you stay alive. Crassius's Favor's in there. Light Heal, we'll get to why that's in there really in a moment. You also need a win condition, which is the way a control deck closes out is usually by an obscene top end. Probably the greediest player you'll ever see in this game. I don't even think that's an exaggeration. So my top end usually consists of 12 or more 7-drop pluses. Here we have a measly 2, because Arrest doesn't really count. Legionnaire Prefect doesn't really count. So you have Encano and Parthenax. Both you can get with gold. Encano is incredible value, amazing damage, all around, probably one of my favorite cards in the game. Parthenax is theoretically limitless value. If you get Soul Tear off of Parthenax, you can just Soul Tear back Parthenax and just infinite dragons. It's really, really good. If you don't, you still get 3 cards off it, so it's a 9-mana card that draws you 3 cards, all of which you can play immediately, which just puts so much pressure and so much danger for your opponent on the board.
I mean, if you're a new player, you should already be familiar with Parthenax. He stepped onto the stage and became the de facto top end for Control X, and that has never really gone away.
Yes.
There is nothing better to be doing on 12 mana, as much as we can argue that Sothersill is competing.
Sothersill's probably better, honestly.
You think?
Well, Parthenax is a potential win condition, definitely a good play. Sothersill is absolutely a win condition where if you don't answer it, you can shackle Parthenax.
So talk to me about Chanter of Aktash.
Okay, so 2 cards is not enough of a win condition. You can't just expect to win every game with Encano Parthenax. So this deck Now, I have tried to make budget control decks before. I used to try to make them all the time. I always come back to Mage, because they're the only ones that have decent cheap removal. And every list I ever make always comes back to Chanter of Akatosh, because I do think it is required for cheap control.
So,
However,
to start with, tell me the text on Chanter of Akatosh.
it says, after you play an action, summon a random creature from your deck with the same cost. So what that does is you play that not on turn 5, you play it way after turn 5, and you play it with a spell, and it will pull a creature from your deck. So you'll play a 5-mana 1/2, you'll play, say, Piercing Javelin, and it will summon a Phalanx Exemplar next to it. If it goes unanswered, which if you're playing a control deck, you kind of hope that you grind your opponent down so they can't answer all of your stuff. You play a bunch of spells next turn. You could play Arrest to summon Legion Prefect and buff your entire board. You play Crassus's Favor to summon 2 1-drops and then another 2-drops. You get a Ward Crafter. You play a Firebolt, you get Stallute Servant.
Solid Stalwart.
Wow, I can talk words. You play Lightning Bolts, and it gives you, say, Black Dragon. That's crazy value. That's really, really good. So the idea here is to play Chanter, play a spell, and the next turn play Arrest, buff the whole board, and just hope to God that's enough. It's never enough, but it's the best chance you have if you don't have Mirax and Dawn's Wrath and Odahving and Sothasil and all the late game you really need.
Speaking of which, unlike the previous deck lists, I'm not going to make Reg go through the hour it might take to tell you all the ways to upgrade this.
Oh God, I'll give you a couple.
As a new player, you should already be using Legends decks as a resource. If you go into there and look up Rejection, you will see his support mage and why there is no way in hell that we can possibly talk about upgrading this deck.
Yeah, that thing, that's probably the cheapest control deck I own, and it's 22,000 shards.
Yeah.
So Rejection is actually, and his decks are actually the reason why people think this game is not fully free to play. It's definitely pay to win. Definitely pay to win.
I mean, my way is...
I had a question. Quick question.
Okay.
Actually, more of an observation and then no question. Yeah. Okay. So I feel like this deck, not just with all the options, but it's a little bit faster than most of your decks. It's definitely not meant to last like an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
So the major difference between budget control and control is that control can take honestly half an hour and be comfortable with it because it has the top end to survive and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Budget does not. So the Cal said something to me a while ago that stuck with me, which is why I think this deck could even win one game. And that is aggro tries to play its biggest threats on turns 1 through 4. Mid-range tries to play its biggest threats on turns 5 through 8. And then control plays its biggest threats on turns 9 and up. So what this deck does is its major threats are going to be starting on turn 8 with Ancano, 10 with Chanter and 5-drop, and 12 with Parthenax. So it is looking to close the game out by turn 13. And if you haven't, you're probably going to lose.
I also feel like this list is a lot of fun. A lot more fun than most control decks would be if you're not that... if you're just getting started with control. This is a lot of fun because by the time that you can drop Chanter of Akatosh and start doing all the crazy stuff that you can do with this deck.
Chanter is a fun card.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, yeah. It's a fun card. It's also a very annoying card when you're on the other side of the board. But I digress.
I will make the same observation about Chanter as I will from Ash Berserker. If you can avoid it, you really don't want to play it unless you can turn it on right away.
Yep. It's always Chanter is one of those cards that only has value if you play it later than the actual magic it costs.
Yes, if you play it on turn 5 and hope it lives, better be 2 turns from dying.
Yep. So quick observation here. This is very important. As you can see, budget. There's a reason why the budget mage deck is the one that has no double color creatures or cards, because the multicolor cards for mage are very expensive, right?
Well, they are Mage's Trick, that useless 6-drop 3/3 that I don't even remember the name, and
Skywatch Vindicator, I think.
Oh no.
No, that was a monthly reward, so it doesn't really particularly count here.
Oh, really?
It's evil. That card's evil. It's just disgustingly bad. And Aaron, which is one of the better legendaries in the entire game, but it's a legendary you have to craft, so I wasn't gonna put it in this.
So that was good. I like that. Like I said, this is a really fun list. I can see myself playing this and not, falling asleep, making myself a shake, having a 3-course meal, and then coming back in. I'm still only halfway done with the game with control. So kudos on that one. That one's good.